What up, what up, what up? It's your boy, All the Dialogue. I got a special guest on the line. So if you don't mind, introduce yourself to the people.
Well, I'm known as Master T. I was a former VJ on the national network called Much Music, National Video Network. We were kind of equivalent to MTV, but we were a lot different because our environment was interactive. So we had our offices on the same floor as we would have bands coming in and performing, and we did live interviews from that space as well. I was on there from about 1990 to about 2001 when I left, and I conducted. I was the host and producer of a show called Demix Extendamix, which was black music based programming. So I hosted that show every weekend, which brought all kinds of different music. It was R&B, hip hop, reggae, soca vibes, R&B, soul, everything. It was all mixed into the one show. We'd have guests coming by, throughout that every week as well. I was also a regular VJ, so I did a lot of interviews with all kinds of people: Madonna, J-Lo, Lauryn Hill, Jay-Z, Barry White, just to name a few. Eminem, everybody. And hosting that and being a VJ, it was amazing because it took me, I guess, all over the world, doing various interviews, especially at the time and the height of when I was there. Record labels had money, so for promotions, if they were promoting a record, they used to fly us from Canada, all over the U.S. to do interviews with all kinds of artists releasing music at the time. So I managed to interview, obviously, as I said before, a lot of people, during that tenure. So I'm currently working for a company called RX Music, which is a music consultancy company. We create custom music programming, but I'm also the director of media production, and with that, we're hosting a show called RX Music IG Live, which is an online series. I'm still interviewing emerging artists and established artists. Just finished doing an interview with Maxi Priest today, and that's currently where I'm at.
So before we get into you conducting Tupac's last interview, did you know or meet Tupac prior to that?
Well, I never met him, but I saw him, and I was actually another one of the events that we used to cover was the Soul Train Awards. So we were in LA, covering the Soul Train Awards, and what would happen is we would actually pay, obviously, to broadcast the actual full show, but we would send a crew down there, and I was a host and a cameraman to conduct interviews with post. So the post winners. So when they came backstage, we'd interview them, and then we'd put together this whole show surrounding the Soul Train Awards. But Def Jam used to put on an event at the House of Blues, and it was one of the hottest parties that was there. And I think that night it might have been D'Angelo that was performing. But so we were there, and it was interesting because I saw Tupac, and he was just standing. This is pretty much close to the end of the night, and he was standing there, and he wasn't a very tall guy, but he had these two models that were almost perfect height, standing beside him, and he was in one of those kind of like those old school suits, like the old kind of Gatsby suits with like spats and the whole thing. He was looking clean. And the crazy thing was, I just kept looking at him and just watching his movements and just his high level of confidence. And, then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I see Suge Knight and someone else helping Method Man, because they were literally dragging him out, holding him, up by his shoulders, because he was wasted. He was sorry, Method Man, but he was just gone, and they were kind of carrying him out. And Tupac was kind of standing there with these two two women beside him and just kind of shaking his head like, come on, man, like, like, you got to keep it together. He just had this look of almost disdain, like, or you're messing up the night. But, yeah, that was the one that I didn't really get to speak to him, but, again, it was just kind of just watching. Sometimes I think it's more interesting just watching someone's movements and character, just from afar. So yeah, that was kind of cool.
So let's get right into it. You conducted Tupac's last interview a few days prior to the Vegas incident. Take me through that entire day leading up to you interviewing Tupac.
Well, we were actually Much Music. We were there to to cover, to kind of cover the event post. Again, we never really got to see the actual award show because we would conduct interviews, after someone, won an award. So, we were kind of flown there, as part of the media, to conduct these interviews and, put together, like we just kind of call it, not a skeleton crew, but it was a crew where it was almost like we were on. It was like it's almost like commando style because there's only really we didn't travel with like 3 or 4 producers. There's a cameraman, his name was Jay Myris, and a producer, Tony Nutchef, and myself. And just the 3 of us, we were just we were there and we conduct these interviews, after people won awards and just kind of capturing the evening. And also doing live pops back to Canada. So, and then after that, so we're there, covering the event, and it's exciting. I mean, this is you're getting to see all the biggest artists at that time, and no one could take away the fact how huge MTV was and the power of what it had in terms of back in the day, before all the downloading, before Spotify, and before YouTube, and before all these other platforms. MTV, as everyone knew, was it. So it was that was my first time going down to check it out. And so it was very exciting. I mean, the thing is, we'd heard about this the MTV post party, and people have told us even from Canada that went there the year before. Oh man, it's a splash! Like they just they provide so much. It's just such a big big event, and they drop all this cash. So after we did the awards, that's where we essentially headed over. We headed over to Central Park to conduct a bunch of different interviews and just hang out, really. I mean, because the one thing about it is we weren't walking around with a script and saying, okay, let's go talk to this person, let's go talk to that person. We're just kind of there for the catching the whole vibe of the evening, and the event was still kind of going on, the awards, and the park wasn't that full. And so we were kind of checking things out, and in one corner you've got sushi, there's just all this food laid out, and it's obviously all outside, and it's just you could just see the great lengths of what this after party was about. And so we were just kind of like mingling around, and between us and our producer and I and our cameraman, we saw these this chanting, and people holding up these signs, death row east, and there must have been about, I don't know, it looked like there's about 15, 20 people with all these signs, and they had T-shirts on, and we're just kind of standing there like what's going on, and so we're watching them, they're shouting it out, and it's become, you could tell like it was forceful. It was like, and it was almost like, well, what are they doing here at the party? Like, it was almost like, what's going on? But and then our producer, she spotted, she goes, hey, isn't that Suge? Isn't that Suge Knight there? And I would look over, and goes, oh yeah. And Suge is a daunting figure, and and before that, his reputation had preceded him. So we're all like, okay, that's Suge. Oh, like he's pretty. We don't want to go over there. And then she's like, well, look, yeah, there's Tupac. And I'm like, okay, all right, cool. And she said, well, let's go over. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going over there. And then the cameraman looks at me, goes, well, we're not going over there. So we kind of like, well, look, it's better if you go over and talk to him. So we kind of all three of us are kind of going there together, and we're kind of pushing her ahead and, kind of shove her out there. And she goes, hey, Mr. Suge. Because she was this quirky person, Tanya. And she goes, hey, Mr. Suge, is it possible to get an interview with Tupac? He goes, yeah, sure, of course. I'm like, okay. And I'm here with the mic. I have no, pre-questions. I haven't been sitting here researching the whole night, which is what I would normally do or whatever. And first, I just they're both standing there, and I just, the crazy thing was there's two versions that I see online. There's like a longer version where I actually have them introduce themselves, and then there's the one where he goes into his prolific diatribe. And so the long version is I just said, hey, introduce yourself, guys. And I could tell immediately that, they were kind of put off as like, well, look, I'm Suge, and I'm Tupac, because that was just something I always did anyway. It was just so, hey, if you don't know who this person is, hey, you introduce yourself to Canada, or you introduce yourself to Much Music, the nation's music station. So I said to the guy, I said, okay, guys, look, introduce yourselves. And Suge goes, yeah, Suge Knight. And Tupac kind of looks at me. If you watch the video, he's kind of looking like, oh, man, really? I got to introduce myself? Doesn't everyone know who I am? And he said, yeah, Tupac Shakur. And then, so the first thing I asked him was, I said, well, hey, what did you guys think about, MC Hammer winning the award? He's like, look, man, like, we got nothing but love for him because, he sold 6 million records, and and that, like that. And then I said to Tupac, I said, hey, Tupac, what's the deal with, these Death Door East? And the famous line is, you believe in God? I said, yep. And then from there, he went into his famous diatribe, just talking about everything from, the East Coast and overthrowing, weak rappers, P. Diddy and Nas, and he just that was it. It was, and the thing is, to me, it was like when people say you did the last interview, like I was there and I just asked him a question. I think, and it was just, and I think it was also how passionate and eloquently he spoke, and that was just him, I think, anyway, in terms of who he was as a person, and it was just. A lot of foreshadowing, and it was just prolific because of the times and what was going on, within the hip hop culture at the time.
What was you thinking at that moment, man, when you was interviewing Tupac and y'all doing the interview in New York, and Tupac is this and Nas, Biggie, and Puffy, all these people that's from New York? What was you thinking at that moment, my man?
You know what? You're standing there. You're here to do an interview, and Much Music. We weren't really about drama. Like now you have you have TMZ, and that's the first thing they're looking for. They're looking for that soundbite. That $1 million soundbite. When it was happening, I'm sitting here going like, in my own mind, like this is gold. Like everything he's talking about here, this is like it's a rare moment when you can actually stand there and just hear someone just basically saying, I don't really give a crap about what who I'm talking about, what I'm saying. And you could feel his energy though, like as much as he was like passionate and pissed off, you could just feel his presence. And that was like I said, for the very first time that I saw him back at the Soul Train Awards. He just carried. He had such a magnetism about him, and a powerful energy that you just kind of get roped in. And you're just kind of standing there, just looking at this figure who is just telling it like it is. From his perspective, this is what we're here. This is what Death Row East is all about. This is what we're going to do. And it was almost like, and then also I was watching Suge too, because Suge was just like, yep, that's, like, stir the pot. That's my guy right there, and then just kind of watching him, and at the same time, it was like, we talked about it after. It was like, we're also, there's a level of nervousness because we knew there was, things going on, in that evening as well. So there was a level of, not a high level of nervousness, but there was some level of nervousness for sure. And but at the same time, it was like, just he just did his thing. He just said what he had to say, and that was. I thanked him, said, "Hey, thanks," and you just kind of left standing there, like, what just happened?
When you say it was a level of nervousness when you was interviewing Tupac, go more into detail about that, if you don't mind.
Well, I mean, there was first and foremost the fact that obviously Death Row was a West Coast record label, and everyone knows the story of that there was the beef there was beefing between the East and the West, and we were actually we were actually nervous in terms of going because it was already kind of in the air that something was supposed to go down, and that kind of carried through the evening. Like even when we got there, there's an edge of that, something's going to go down, something might go down, and like that's just you got to walk around with that. You got to walk around with the fact that you got to be aware of your environment. You got to be aware of what's going on, and here we are. We're talking to the guy Tupac, who's at the height of at that time the media's putting it out there that the East Coast, West Coast. I mean, obviously he's the biggest guy from the West Coast. With his whole troop carrying Death Row East. So and you're in New York, and so that's automatically to me that's like, hey, I mean, and they were deep. There's no two ways about it. There was a whole bunch of them, but you're still coming to you're still coming to New York, where there's, not just one hip hop artist. There's a whole bunch of different hip hop artists, obviously, that are high level East Coast, rappers, right? And so, yeah, there was definitely a level of tension, and not only that. When we interviewed him, it was very early in the night, like so there wasn't a lot of people around. It was almost like they were just they got there early, and we just managed to kind of capture him.
Right. And you said when you interviewed Tupac was real deep with a whole lot of people, right?
Yeah. There was a whole bunch. Definitely, there's a whole bunch of I can't know the exact number, but there's definitely. There's definitely over 20 people with him. That's for sure. And and then some of them had signs. And then but there was definitely there was definitely a full presence. And a presence of like, hey, we're gonna make our presence felt, and we're gonna show our presence. And and that was. That's what they wanted to do, and really and truly, that's that's what they did, and I was actually surprised something didn't really go off in the park. I mean, it was really, because even when we finished the interview, we're talking about it after, and we're like, shit, like what if something kind of popped off right there, while we're doing this interview, because it was that kind of. Is that kind of tension where anything could have happened.
Right. While you was conducting this interview with Tupac, was Snoop Dogg anywhere around?
No, he wasn't. But I mean, they were there most of the night together, but he wasn't there. And then it's a full on change for Tupac too, because he wore whatever he was wearing to the award show. And then, he came out and he had on his Death Row East T-shirt, so, they were there for the business of, putting it out there. And that's exactly what it was exactly his mandate.
Right. So Tupac and Snoop was at the MTV Awards the whole night together.
Yeah, we saw them once, kind of going in, but yeah, they, most of the night they were there. Because for us, we didn't get the opportunity to go into the actual awards show. So we would do, like we said, we would do like live pops from from outside the building. So we'd be like, hey, here we are, MTV Awards, and we just saw this person going in, or that person was doing this, and we do like a live throw back to Canada, and as the awards show was going on. So it would kind of like they do the awards show, and then they kind of pop in with us, kind of doing like a live pop from from New York.
While you was doing this interview with Tupac, did you see Nas anywhere?
No, we didn't see Nas, but and this is where I can't remember whether. No, I definitely said something like after the interview, something did go off because there was cops. There's a whole bunch of cops, and we were trying to figure out what it was, and it was crazy because people in the park were going, "Oh, somebody got shot," and we're like, "What?" And this is after we interviewed him. It might have been even 10 minutes or so after we interviewed him. And that was our early exit because, there could have been a whole bunch of sushi. I wasn't interested at that point. So we would just, we kind of bounced. But yeah, there was definitely, there was a lot of tension, and something did obviously happen. And that could have been that altercation, that supposedly happened between, I don't know if it was Nas's brother, or Nas, but yeah, I didn't, yeah, we weren't around. For that.
Did you hear anything going around about the run-in Tupac and Nas had?
Did I hear anything?
Yeah.
Oh, that night? No, that night, no. Because it's interesting because when something like that happens, you start to hear all kinds of different things. I mean, at one point I heard, honestly, like within the park, people were saying, "Oh, Nas got shot." We heard that, and then there was a stand up against Tupac and Nas, and something went down. So it was just a lot of stories kind of flashing about. I mean, I was watching something even with Nas, and Nas was like, "Man, that was so long ago. I'm trying to remember myself what happened." But I know that he said that they Nas said that they approached him and kind of like, hey, what are you guys doing? And there was a back and forth between Nas and Tupac, but I think things were resolved there. Whatever rumblings were happening between them, apparently they said it was kind of squashed. But I find it interesting too because when we interviewed Tupac, if he kind of shut things down with and resolved things with Nas, before that, when I did the interview with him, he was like all these weak rappers like Nas and Puff Daddy. So I'm trying to figure out exactly the timeline. So maybe that got changed. But.
So you conduct Tupac's last interview. We fast forward. Tupac gets shot in Vegas. What was your reaction when you heard the news that Tupac got shot?
I was actually hosting my show. My show used to be live on a Saturday, and it was like a surreal moment. It was just like, at that point everyone had heard, and it's different because it's like, there wasn't social media where everyone could be jumping all over their phones and they're getting information firsthand. So this is where you're actually getting something from a news source, and bounced across the world, and a lot of times you're almost cautious to go, okay, is this real? Is this true? Yeah, I mean it was such a shock because no matter what went on, I mean, this is a live figure, a live human being that I just finished, speaking to days ago, and it's very surreal. I talk about it now, like whenever it comes up, it's people, well, what was it like? And you're the last person, and it's like, hey, it's not a badge of honor. It's not like you thrive to do, to do interviews so you can be the last person, to interview a person. But I think it was also what the message he carried at the time too. But it was definitely a sense of shock for me. Just like I said, just interviewing him prior to that.
What was your reaction when it was announced that Tupac passed away?
Saddened. I mean, it was just like, definitely saddened, because it was just, again, it was something where I think when you have that level of an exchange with somebody, it's hard for it not to impact you. So whether I spent hours and hours with Tupac, which I didn't, obviously, but that exchange I had with him was so meaningful and so powerful, and just being around somebody with that that presence and that mind and that energy, it hits you, and so I was definitely in shock. I mean, in terms of his passing, it was you just didn't want to believe it, in terms of someone who, but at the same time, it's like, this shit is really, really serious. Like, but I just saddened for the actual industry, for the industry as well. I mean, just saddened because it was like, look, to just really have to, do you really have to be killed? I mean, and there's all kinds of conspiracy theories. I mean, to this day, there's, people, as creating, all kinds of shows, and you're trying to tell me you can't find the killers of or who killed him, So yeah, it's definitely, sad, and just even my fan base at the time, like that was, it hit home, definitely.
Out of curiosity, since you was the last person to interview Tupac, did people try to get in contact with you since you was the last person to interview him?
Well, I mean, if I don't remember the date, someone is gonna, now on Instagram, someone's gonna remind me. Someone's gonna let me know. Just September 4th, the amount of in my inbox when people were, sending me the video, remind me, like, hey, this is, this is Tupac's last interview. And then there's a million sites of of just straight up Tupac, sites, on Instagram, so they're posting, and they're keeping his legacy alive, and I mean, for me to be a small part of that, I actually wrote it on my Instagram, when somebody sent it to me. I said, this is still one of the most surreal moments of my career, because it really is. Actually, again, you sit there and you talk to somebody, and then and then they're gone. And so I still get a lot of outpouring in terms of around that time and this time, how much it's really affected people, how much his loss really has meant to people, and to this day, I mean, it's so it just shows you how much of an artist he really was in terms of what he stood for, his presence, his energy. And he just managed to. He's the type of person that managed to, cross over in many different, forms. Whether it's, whether it's hanging with Madonna, whether it's hanging in the streets. Like he just managed to, one of those guys that to achieve such a high level of status, through his lyrics and through his music and through his person.
Right. Out of curiosity, is there any more footage from that interview you did, or all the footage is out there?
All the footage is out there. I mean, because that was it. From like I said, there's two versions that I've seen. I've seen the one where I just asked him the question about Death Row East, and then that one's played. But then the other one is when we actually had them introduce each other, which is about 2 minutes, just over 2 minutes. And the one I think is like a minute 40 something. So yeah, that's pretty well. That's pretty well it. There wasn't. We didn't really shoot him walking around or hanging out. We just kind of caught him in that moment. Then.
Right. So with that being said, my man, before I end the interview, any final words?
I think first of all, thanks for reaching out. I really appreciate it. I guess for me sometimes it's still a very, like I said, it's a very surreal moment to talk about this. And what's interesting for me too is just the fact that it's so generational. I have two boys, 23 and 17, and I'll have their friends who know me or know of me from that interview. I have little young kids, come up to me, yeah, you're the last guy that interview Tupac, and and like I said, it's something that you don't want to have as badge of honor, but it's it was fascinating to hear him actually get out what he needed to say, and with no script, just right off the top of his head in terms of bringing out what he wanted to deliver, to the East Coast and the world at the time.